Happy to see amongst you here His Excellency Tijani Fidel, who is the Sudanese ambassador to the European Union and to Belgium. Incidentally, in 2005, after the peace agreement, he was the Minister of International Cooperation in the Government of National Unity, and I was the State Minister of International Cooperation. So we worked together. So it is nice to see you here, Your Excellency. First of all, one is here in Brussels today on a very important note on this EU-Africa Summit, of which South Sudan, as a young state, is participating in. And the theme of this Africa or European Union Africa Summit is very relevant to what the people of South Sudan would expect, and that is investing in the people, which is the theme, prosperity and peace. And these are issues at the global level that South Sudan is very much concerned with, and especially when it addresses common challenges with concrete benefits to the citizens, to the people for which we fought for. That is the joint European Union-Africa partnership. So young as we are, we're here to represent our country on that note. But I'm here specifically also to tell you what South Sudan is, that some of you may not be able to know. South Sudan, of course, is quite a big chunk of land. It was previously a part of a united Sudan, and South Sudan became independent in 2011, following a comprehensive peace agreement which was signed in 2005, and that was after a very long civil war that continued for over 30 years. On the 9th of July, 2011, 98.85% of the people of South Sudan voted for an independent state of their own. So it was the will of the people that actually resulted in the birth of this new nation. And I've come here because 2 years later, 2013, you heard of the recent crisis that happened, and that's why I will talk, when I talk on the global issue about South Sudan, it is also important for us to know what this young state is all about. South Sudan is a huge chunk of land. It's about 644,000 square kilometers of land, bigger than the size of France, and with a very small population of about 10, 12 million. And in fact, it is gifted with enormous resources. We call it the Virgin Territory of Africa. Why we call them Virgin Territory of Africa, I think both gentlemen and young women who are here, you know what we mean by being a virgin territory. South Sudan is endowed with enormous resources that have never been exploited, like the rest of Africa. Endowed with a lot. It is mineral, it is not only oil you hear of, but there are other minerals like iron, gold, nickel, of course, uranium, diamonds, that have been proven, not yet exploited, but a tremendous agricultural land. It has a huge agricultural potential, which actually the fertility of that land has not also been utilized. And that's why you can, small farming areas which are used as organic farming, they don't use fertilizers. It is not like your farms here in Belgium, where you use a lot of fertilizers. When you eat your food, you end up with a headache because of so much fertilizers used in the food you produce. It has also tremendous livestock. It has a livestock of nearly 33 million head of cattle, huge amount. In fact, in Africa today, we have got the largest number But if you come to Juba, it will be very difficult to get a glass of milk because these cattle are not being used economically in order to generate dairy products that are required for any process. We have also the largest number of animal migration. We have one of the biggest animal migration today in South Sudan, bigger than what you know of, like Masai Mara of Kenya or Serengeti of Tanzania. It is also an area that needs investment to be developed into probably good tourist attraction. We have also a huge number, we have huge quantities of fresh water, enormous river waters, as you know. A part of the Nile, which is known as the White Nile, is a part of the Greater Nile. As you know, Nile, the longest river on earth, and you find that Nile also with the numerous tributaries that flow into it. We have also good quantities of rainfall, 3 types of rainfall, equatorial type of rainfall, which rains nearly throughout places of Equatoria. We have also the tropical zone where we have 6 months of rainfall, and the savanna zone where it rains about 4 to 5 months of rainfall. The source of water is a huge underground water, fresh water. So you can see why we call it the virgin territory of Africa. That's why at the global stage we have been inviting a lot of investment opportunities so that these investment opportunities, these resources can be used for the benefit of the people of South Sudan, as well as for the region, as well as for the international community. We are surrounded by 6 countries. To the south of us, you get, of course, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which you know, King Leopold II, who was the property of King Leopold II, the DRC. It's a very huge, rich territory. You have also Kenya, Uganda and Kenya, and to the east we have Ethiopia, to the west a bit we have Central African Republic. You hear now there are problems. And to the north of us we have the Republic of Sudan, which is our neighbor with whom we have the longest border of nearly 2,200 kilometers. So you can see South Sudan is in the heart of Africa. If anything happens here, you can imagine what problems you can cause. Of all these 6 countries, it can cause a lot of problems. So the global element of South Sudan is reflected not only in its resources, which are attractive, but it is equally reflected in the political stability of the country itself. And I think this is a very important element to know, the political stability. That's why today we're in the European Union Africa Summit. They are talking about the stability, peace and security in Africa. And one of the countries in which they need peace and security, it is not only Central African Republic, it is not the DRC Congo, it is not only Somalia, it is not only Mozambique, for example, it is not only what is happening in the Sudan also, with problems there. It is not only, you can go in Nigeria where you have Boko Haram, but incidentally, the stability, peace, and security is a concern. And we are contributing to that process of stability in South Sudan. What would we require? What is the global element? The concern, what is the concern in Brussels? That Africa and the rest would meet to talk about security, peace, and security on our continent. Of course, because of the strategic partnership that we have, this partnership of Africa with Europe is very, very important. First, we have got colonial history. I told you a while ago. I think only the young Belgians who are here, you may not, but if King Leopold was to get us from his grave, he would lecture to you about the DRC. He knew why strategically in the presence of Belgian Congo at that time. The stability, the partnership is strategic in terms of the historical connection between Africa and Europe, one. And if you look at these countries, including my own country, we had partnership, part of the United Kingdom, which we used to have what they call the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. British sometimes feel that South Sudan was a part of its colonial heritage. That's one. Two, in terms of the economy, the resources I told you about connect us also with Europe, because these resources are important. They are a part of that connection. Of course, the third part of it is, of course, what they call the global village that we have today. That if Central Africans are killing themselves, Europe cannot sit here and just watch. They would also want to see that there is peace and stability. Or if there is the crisis, which is my main topic, I will talk of very briefly. What happened in South Sudan recently is very important. So you can see the connection we have between the global element. You may ask, of course, that it is not only Europe which is in Africa. It is not only Europe that is in the countries like South Sudan. Yes, the Chinese are there, the Russians are there, the Americans are there, the Arab countries are also there. So there is this interconnection, and what draws each country to a particular situation is reflected in these things. That is the historical element, political relationship, diplomatic relationship, economic interest, and many other interests that are connected. So South Sudan, after becoming independent on the 9th of July 2011, we completely got surprised. As you know, you have followed the devastating eruption of an armed conflict within our country, which started in the army barracks in Juba itself on the 15th of December 2013. That dreadful event has been called many names. Many people were saying, oh, it's ethnic. It's a fight between the tribes, which is not true. Because South Sudan has got about 63 tribes, and you cannot say that there is an ethnic, and there's no part of Africa, by the way, where there are no tribes. Even this Belgium, he speaks very good French. There are 3 here. You have got the Flemish, the Dutch, and the Italian. You see, so we can say yes, that we have about 63 tribes in part of South Sudan. What happened, in fact, was an attempted process in trying to change the government through the use of force, so that one would take power. Now, that is why, in English terms, when you try to change a government through the use of force, it is known as a coup. I understand coup is originally a French word, taken over by English now, it is that word. But originally it is French. That is, I'm sure the linguist is here, I mean the ambassador will know it better, is trying to change an elected government led by President Salva Kiir. As I said, President Salva was elected through a democratic process by the people of South Sudan, 93.4%. They elected him as a leader of the SPLM, which is the majority party in the Republic of South Sudan. Elected him as the president, and his running mate was the former vice president, Dr. Riek Machar, who was his vice president. Now, this conflict has now taken on a different shape. As you know, the shape of an armed rebellion against the legitimate government of the Republic of South Sudan. This episode was followed by various defections within the army, because when the attempted coup happened in Juba itself, certain divisional commanders also got divided. In Jonglei State, the divisional commander expressed his allegiance to the vice president, so the army divided there and started fighting each other. The divisional commander, Division 4 in Unity State, expressed his allegiance to the former vice president. The army got divided and the fight happened. Now in Juba itself, which is the capital of South Sudan, after the loyal forces to the government repulsed the rebellious part of the army, Those who came back because of the killing that happened, in fact, started to target particular tribes in Juba, especially the Nuer ethnic community. And that's why you hear this issue that it is an ethnic fight came out. And you know, soldiers, when they go to war and they come back, sometimes they lose discipline and begin to misbehave. And that resulted in the killing a lot of Dinka ethnic community in Juba town, which was actually officially condemned by the government. In other areas, it happened also in Bo also. It happened also in which some Dinkas were also killed by the ethnic community. In Akobo, it happened also where the 2 Indian peacekeepers were also killed in defense of those ethnic groups. So when you talk about fight between Dinka and Nuer, it did not happen in the ordinary citizens, like what happened in Rwanda. In Rwanda, it was the neighbors, the ordinary citizens, killing themselves. But the ethnic element which nearly came out because first of the feeling of revenge, because simply they saw that the vice president was a Nuer and the president is a Dinka, people think that this must be a Nuer-Dinka type of fight. But I think it is in a limited manner within the fighting forces. What did the government do about that? Indeed, it resulted in the formation of an investigation committee in order to isolate and identify these individuals who were engaged in ethnic elimination, and already some of these people have been arrested because a lot of innocent lives were lost in this process. I think this is very important to say why I'm dwelling on it, because there is no ethnic war in South Sudan. As I said, what is happening, of course, is an attempt to change the power. It's a struggle for power, which resulted where the vice president wanted to change an elected democratic government in order to come into force. Now, how it started as an SPLM issue. SPLM is a party, is the ruling party that had the majority in the parliament. That is the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. And they, on the 15th, they were having a political Peru meeting, which had actually said, in order to put down 3 things, to rewrite the constitution of the party, to put down the manifesto of the party, and also the discipline within the party. That was passed by the political bureau of the party, which included both the president and the vice president are members of the SPLM political bureau. So on the 15th, the National Liberation Council of the party, which is an elected body of the party, was now going to sit in order to pass the constitution of the party, which was formed. Now, the vice president has been expressing his wish that he would want to contest the presidency of the Republic of South Sudan. And for you to contest at the card of the SPLM, you must become the president of the party for you to be the flag bearer in order for you to stand. Now, when the political National Liberation Council sat in order to discuss the issue of the constitution of the party, it transpired that 128 members out of 136 were still the supporters of the present leadership of the party, and that is the present President Salva Kiir Mayadi. It means the vice president had only about 8 out of 136. That was on the 15th. And that's why the vice president saw that there would be no chance for him to get the party presidency so that he can become the flag bearer in 2015 general elections as well as presidential elections. That's why on the 16th, they boycotted the meeting of the National Liberation Council, and at 9:30 p.m. at night, the shooting started in the presidential guards, which is the Republican Guard. This is a unit that actually protects the government, the presidency, and the state institutions. And these were mainly the supporters of the former vice president of the Republic. I think it is important to know this sequence of events because sometimes people would just rush to the issue of ethnicity as the main source. Now, so what was originally a dispute in the leadership of the SPLM party has been lost and submerged by these tragic events. As of now, we know one thing for sure, that those who, of course, supported Riek and were thrown out, the former Vice President Riek, were displaced out of Juba and other towns, in fact, started to claim the leadership. And they now call themselves the SPLM-A in opposition. So, what started as a dispute in the party went into the government in the form of an attempted coup, and from that on it transpired into an open rebellion in the area. Now, on the 16th, of course, most of the control within the capital, Juba, was under the control of the government. And then on the 17th, the IGAD countries' foreign ministers came in, they flew into Juba because they wanted this process to stop immediately. That was the start of the peace process, which I think it is important for us to know. The IGAD countries, of course, met and they called for a summit, which was attended in Nairobi on the 27th of December. So you can see from the 15th to the 27th, that is 12 days later, the IGAD countries' presidents met in Kenyan capital, Nairobi, and they drew up 4 principles. These 7 IGAD countries, this is a regional grouping, by the way. It's a sub-regional grouping, which consists of Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, and Djibouti. They are known as IGAD countries. They are a sub-region. The leaders of these countries met in Nairobi, and they drew up 4 principles in order to bring the crisis in South Sudan to an end. First, they said the first thing that there must be direct talks between the 2 parties, direct negotiations. 2, there should be cessation of hostilities, that the fighting must stop. 3, that the detainees, there were politicians who were suspected to be a part of the coup, and they were arrested by the government and detained. So the condition of detainees, the status of the detainees was to be resolved according to the laws of the Republic of South Sudan. And number 4, that there should be humanitarian commitment, that humanitarian assistance that should go in, and then finally, that there should be a political settlement with process of reconciliation process to proceed. That was agreed, that was on the 27th in Nairobi, and commitment was done by the government, the Republic of South Sudan, got committed to that program. So on the 23rd of January, the 2 parties met in Addis Ababa, and the cessation of hostilities was signed. That is between the rebels and the government. Now, if you take the days from the 15th of December, when the problem started, to the 23rd, you are talking about 38 days. So within 38 days, it was possible for the peace process to start. I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's important for us to analyze this. If you look at the problem in Somalia, when it broke out, how many years now? 20-something years, and yet there is no peace in sight. Even when you look in South Africa, where a great icon, late President Mandela, was the president, there was a fight between, of course, in places like KwaZulu-Natal. It happened between the ANC, between the Zulu and the Xhosa, where the most important respected individual, President Mandela, the most just president was ever, still there was an inter-tribal fighting that happened in South Africa. And it took nearly 3 years before things settled down. You saw it in Mozambique between the Frelimo, of course, which was fighting the cases of Renamo. If you go on, even in Kenya, it happened, of course. You see in the DRC, which is well known to you here, from the 60s until today, 50 years later, still the problem of the DRC is still now being discussed at the European Union here. In case of South Sudan, within 38 days, we were able to start a peace process by the IGAD countries. I think that is very important. It gives a hope that the people of South Sudan are able, they can be able, with the help of the region, will be able to reach the peace process. On the 23rd of January, we signed the cessation of hostilities. I think that is very important. It is an indication that the peace process is beginning. And this is what we have been telling the European Union authorities in this country. In this process, this is what we have been telling the European leaders, that yes, a young country, 2 years old, we are sitting here with countries thousands of years old. I don't know how old Belgium is. You can imagine. We're just 2 years old. Now, if some of you get children later, imagine a child of 2 years, he will be breaking glasses left and right. You don't throw the child away, do you? No. So if we are breaking glasses, we tell them, you bear with us. You are hundreds of thousands of years old. We are just 2-year-old country trying to build our country from zero, from the scratch. So if there's a process like the present crisis which happened, look around us. Look at the DRC. Look what happened in Angola. 7 days after they became independent, MPLA and UNITA went on fighting for nearly 27 years before they could reach a settlement. Look at South Africa, the Republic of South Africa, under Mandela. It was fighting until 4 years later. UNITA was, the Zulus and the Xhosa were able to settle down. Look at Mozambique. Now Renamo had gone back to the bush again, fighting. Look at the DRC, 60 years later. Go on, see what is happening in Nigeria. South Sudan is not out of space. We are a part of Africa. So if we are fighting, don't be surprised. But you must also think that if this is what is happening in Africa, at least South Sudan has moved in a better direction because the region has come in and they are trying to resolve their problem. And I think that's where we need, and that's why we are asking the European Union and the African Union of African States that you must support the IGAD peace process that is going on. Because at least we have signed a process, we are on our way to resolving our issue. The cessation of hostilities has been done now. We have to move to the next stage. And as you know, on the 20th of this month, the second round of peace talks have started in Addis Ababa. And the main things that we are to do is to consolidate the cessation of hostilities, and that is the joint technical team has been formed by these countries, and this is to go ahead for the verification and monitoring mechanism. And there are 3 facilitators for this. One, Ethiopia, which is having the chair, Kenya, and the Republic of Sudan. These 3 countries now are involved in the facilitation of the peace process in South Sudan. So what we would require from the rest is to support this peace process, because it has started off. It is not going to take 20, 30 years like in Somalia or in the DRC. And that process must be given chance. And that's why we have been telling some of the European countries that what South Sudan needs is not punishment. Because some people will begin to talk about human rights abuses, which we said, yes, human rights were abused. But how do you resolve that in a civilized manner? Is that the Republic of South Sudan has formed an investigation committee with a very respectable judge, former Chief Justice, which will investigate the cases of human rights abuses. Of course, people will doubt the credibility of the government, and we said, yes, the African Union, through IGAD, have also formed an investigation committee which will work together with the IGAD, with the government, the committee, in order to investigate the cases of human rights abuses. But what we need now is to support the peace process. Usually, these investigation results will hold accountable those who are identified to have committed human rights. They should be abused. That have abused the human rights, they should be held accountable in order to answer to what they have done. And I think that's where we need support, because there is a tendency in Europe. There's a tendency in Europe, oh, human rights abuses, the leaders of the parties, oh, my time is running out. That human rights is abused, oh, we must call it, of course, the Rome Statute. ICC, the Hague, near us here. No, what we need is help. Is help in order to bring peace. And bringing peace, building good institutions, these countries then can establish processes where they can form investigations committee, legal committee, which can hold accountable those who actually violate human rights abuses. So I was talking to the Dutch foreign minister here, who was saying, no, your government is not ready to to proceed and punish those who are not taking peace seriously. And I told him, Your Excellency, what we need first is help, and help in order to achieve peace. And once you do that, then you can later on hold accountable those who abuse human rights, and you can hold them accountable but through institutions which are credible. So these are some of the issues. So really, what I will do maybe is the time is running out quickly. I will leave the rest for your questions that you might be asking, because that is important. But the global nature of our problems in the Republic of South Sudan, as I've said much earlier, and the concern of the people of Europe here and the other parts of the world is that this young nation should again not revert into war. And that something must be done to put an end to war. What I'm saying, we have now a peace process going. We need your support to support this peace process, because this country is endowed with enormous resources which can only be the benefit of the people of South Sudan, but benefit of the region as a whole. Therefore, South Sudan, in terms of peace and security, and I will repeat, has a strategic partnership with the rest of the global community in order to achieve peace, to have a peaceful, safe, secure environment, and to contribute to the human security of our citizens, reducing our fragility as a fragile state, foster our political stability by having an inclusive political dialogue to resolve our political differences, and then an effective governance, which is good governance that people always talk to, through democratic processes that need to be built, and then sustainable and inclusive growth. That is so that there could be service delivery to the people of that country. Of course, we learn lessons which are connected with the crisis management that we learn from others to assist us, and also to have post-conflict processes that resolve those conflicts that cause conflict in the first place, so that really peace before justice. And I think peace before justice is crucial and important, and that should be a common approach on challenges of reconciliation, international justice challenges that we all face in order to resolve issues of global nature, like the issue between Africa and the European Union with regards to mobility, regards to migration, and regards to employment, and of course, resolving issues which are global in nature, like the issue of child soldiers, which is also important. So I believe South Sudan will resolve its problem. So we need your support for peace. But don't look for punishing us. It won't solve the problem. Let us get peace first, and we will resolve our issues. So tell your members of parliament and presidents in the European Union, forget about punishment now. Help this young country. We are number 193 in the United Nations, the youngest nation on earth. And you know, when you are last born in a family, everybody loves you, including your enemies. They will bless you. So we need the love that we need to solve our problem. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's time now to give the floor to you. So please, if you want to make a comment, to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll pass the microphone to you.
A few questions.
Yeah, we can allow a few questions, because time is running. Then if you have 3-4 questions, our minister can be able to answer. Please, yes, go ahead.
You can also ask in French if you want.
Good evening, Your Excellency. Thank you for making time to speak with us.
Yes, your name?
My name is Leah Casera. I'm from the World Economic Forum, but I'm also a student at the institution. You began by painting a beautiful picture of South Sudan that is factual. But you also went ahead and highlighted the investment opportunities that are present in the country. And we all know that certain investments cannot take place if then the space that you talk about, however attractive, is not peaceful. Perhaps it would be useful for you to highlight in specifics certain things that the government of South Sudan has undertaken as a government, as the institution in charge of nation building and state building, to build systems and structures for caregivers, for education providers, and specifically building schools, hospitals, certain things, certain responsibilities that should be governments to build its own country. As you often say when you're in Africa, I hear you say, the Africans say that African problems will be solved by Africans. And so I believe that the responsibility lies with us first before we can look outside. But also, elders say that even a child is punished, and they say, spare the king and spoil the child. And I'd like to also highlight in that context, I'm not a journalist, so I think we're safe here. That, there is talk that the quote-unquote coup that you have attempted to explain to us was actually a result of certain disgruntled elements that were previously friends to the government. And that is what you allude to. But really, there is the belief that out there that it was actually self-inflicted injury to create an impression that there was mayhem and that there were certain disgruntled elements that were previously friends of the government that were trying to destabilize the waters. So maybe you would like to speak to us more about this so that we understand maybe in a little detail, really, where that could have come from. Thank you.
That is more than one question. Yeah, we can take another one.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the wonderful presentation. My name is Kola Delphine. I'm a student of CERIS and I'm from Cameroon. I also happen to be one of the facilitators for the African Young Youth Platform meeting that just presented the head of state summit in Brussels. And for the last 2 days, we have been talking about peace, youth leadership, and entrepreneurship for young people in Africa and Europe, so that we can make recommendations to send to the head of state summit that is actually going on right now. My question is that how are young people involved in the peace process of South Sudan? Because I'm very curious. We have participants who are young and who are very interested in the peace process in Africa, but they really feel excluded. So how are young people involved in the peace process of South Sudan? And for the sake of prosperity, sustainability, and development, are the youth of South Sudan being consulted in this process? And Your Excellency, when I talk of consultation, I don't really mean like doing it for the sake of media or saying that yes, we listen to the youth. Is the government actually putting the needs of the young people at the forefront of this peace consultation process?
Okay, I think let me begin by answer issues raised by the first speaker. First of all, yes, why? As I said, South Sudan had gone a very long war where it was destruction. Anything that was there was destroyed. So we are in the ground zero in terms of beginning development. We have to build our first roads, we have to put in our schools, to fix them, we had to have put in on power. So it's like, that's why I refer to King Leopold II, when he went to DRC, they went with the axes to build, to try and cut the roads to move. We are actually the pioneers of our own country now, because of the long war when destruction has been done and little development was done. Now, and then we found ourselves in these resources. That's why we said these are virgin resources. So what we need, we know that these cannot be developed by South Sudanese. We need partners, we need friends, those who have goodwill towards South Sudan, so that they can come, so that we can work together to develop these resources for the benefit not only of the service delivery to people of South Sudan, but also to our region, as well as to the rest of the international community. So what did we do as a government? We put up good investment laws, which are attractive. Because there is no, if you have got the war going on, there is no mad millionaire here in Brussels who's going to get his few, whatever, euros they have here, get his euros, go and throw them into South Sudan where there is shooting all over the place. That will not happen. So it's our duty that there is stability, that there is peace. We must make sure that there is peace. Secondly, we must make sure that there are investment laws that will attract an investor to carry his little money to go and put it in order, for example, either to build a road or to get involved in a gold mine, what have you. He knows that, or she knows that, at least that his profits will be repatriated back to where he came from. So you must have attractive investment laws. That we have done. Our investment laws are some of the best you can get. And that's why we believe this crisis is counterproductive in order to attract investment to the country. And it also will not be possible for even the government to build the schools you want. You see, to put in health services. We were talking here, as I said, we are a member of what they call the G7. It is not the big G, you know. These are fragile states. We call ourselves G plus. Small G, not big one. Small G plus. We call ourselves a fragile state. These fragile states, we have done what we call with our partners, say in Europe here, what we call the New Deal concept. The New Deal concept, this is a project, a development project that we would want to build that will actually replace the failure of the Millennium Development Goals. And you know the Millennium Development Goals put up by the United Nations was that we were going to build schools, sanitation, you know, gender issues, girls' education, and that sort of thing, so that the society can take off. So we have to institute this New Deal concept, which is actually another deal where three partners are to concentrate. That is the government of the place, like in South Sudan, plus the ordinary people of that country. That is the ordinary citizens that need the service, plus our partners. And say, for example, the European Union. If European Union was to come and they say, look, they want to build a school, they would not just go there and say, well, we build a school in Juba. No, they will ask the community, what is the project of the community? Does the government agree to it? The government say, yes, okay, the European Union will come. All right, we'll build a school here, or a hospital here, or a borehole here. It is an agreement of the needs of the ordinary people on the ground, which is different from what the United Nations put up as Millennium Development Goals. And that is our wish. That's why we said first, peace first, so that we have stability. Once you have stability, you save the life of the people. You reunite the families. You do a lot of things. Psychological settlement, very, very important. And then after that, then you have your stability, then there must be good governance in the place. You put up good democratic systems and laws that will make you to be in collaboration with other countries. And then the partners can come in and do that process. And I think we are going in that direction. That's why we are asking you here that now the issue is not punishment now. The issue is bring peace, so that there is stability. Once there is stability, you have, of course, governance, which is good governance, that is established. In which case, democratic systems, where the ordinary people should decide, or who should their leaders be. They must have the will to choose their leaders and even dismiss them, should they choose so. But in a democratic manner, not through the use of force. And that's why we say democratic processes are important, because it gives the ordinary people the right to choose their leaders and to reject them as they want. So I am sure all these services, which to us we call it the New Deal concept, which to you, you are talking of education, you're talking of health, clean water, shelter, food security, all these things. We can only do them. And we do these things with the partners. That's why Europe is involved in the process. But you cannot also be involved for nothing. There is nothing for nothing, you know? Who says that? Bob Marley or who? Something for something. It's nothing for nothing. You cannot expect the whole of Europe to come and put their money there for nothing. They must also recuperate whatever they can, the resources they need. But it must be a fair deal, not like the old colonial days. It must be fair. For example, you have the African, Caribbean, Pacific nations. There are countries only which produce banana, like the islands in Western. If they sell bananas here to Europe, you see it must be at a good price, isn't it? Now, you have got milk here in Europe, they pour it into the Nile, and I mean into the ocean. If they want to raise the prices of milk, they pour the rest. Where the whole of Africa is going without milk, for example. You see, these are some of the things we need to talk about. So that is important. So I agree with you, yes. What are we doing? Of course, self-inflicted injury. I agree with you. But now we have woken up at least. We want to treat ourselves properly. But to treat ourselves properly, we need the assistance of others. And I think that's why partnership. And that's why, for example, this summit is called the EU-Africa Strategic Partnership. It is strategic in terms that it goes to the benefits as we want as Africans, but not also to the disadvantage of the Europeans, for example. This is taxpayers' money that they are giving Africa. It is not from the leaders here, not President Hollande money, for example, no. It belongs to the ordinary citizens of Europe here who are paying taxes. And if this money is to go to Africa, they must be convinced that it goes there properly to build a school, educate girls' child, for example. The person here will be willing to put in $1 or €1 because they know it will go and help some child in Africa. So it is a strategic partnership. And that strategic partnership must also be built on the understanding when you help Africa, Africa will help itself in terms of the resources we have that they don't have in Europe. Many countries in Europe here have no oil, that's definite. And you have seen the war of oil going all around you. These are issues. Now, my young lady there, young people. In South Sudan, 60% of our population are young people. They are between the ages of 22, 24 downwards, 60%. But it is not only in South Sudan, by the way. In Africa, the majority of our citizens are young people. That is a fact. And more than that, it so happened there are more women than men. So that's why we are worried, men are worried in Africa, because they say one day maybe the women will take over. You know. And then you can see the way she is talking now. You see? So yes, the majority of people are young people. If you go to Japan, in Japan now, they have got more old people than young people. In fact, they are going to look around to get some people from other countries. Because the factories with the beautiful cars of Japan now, they are getting no workers to work there. Because they are beginning to live more than they should live, is it? Yeah, there are more people above the age of 60 upwards. There are no young people because, and in China it is better, they are 1.5, but if they continue with one child policy, soon they might get all over, you know. So the youth in Africa is strategically important. And it is the time bomb we have now in Africa. Because most of these young people, what we have done, most of them are going to the universities and they finish. And yesterday I was listening to a lecture, the president of Ghana. President of Ghana, for example, was saying in Ghana, they are graduating students of humanities. Somebody, for example, is studying, for example, Roman Empire. He graduates with a degree, PhD in Roman Empire. Now he comes to look for a job. He can't get anything. Instead of producing engineers, in producing something better, you know. So if you produce a lot of humanities, for example, you'll find that most of our youth do not get the jobs they want. So what are we doing? I can tell you what we have done, say in our own party, the SPLM party, we've got a youth representative. And the youth representative, actually now he goes to represent the youth in the dialogue, in the talks that are going on. So I can tell you that youth are represented. Not only youth, even women are represented. In our constitution, it says 30% must be women in anything you do. The problem is, unless you don't get qualified women to take over. When we had the agreement in 2005, when the Sudan was still one country, and then we came to Khartoum, the government of national unity was SPLM with the National Congress Party. You see, so we came with the policy that 25% must be women. So our president was saying, you see, 25%. We found in the cabinet in Khartoum, there were very few women. So President Bashir said, yeah, Salva, Salva, what is this? What is this 25%? You have caused me problems now. Because the women in Khartoum were saying we need also 25%. You see? So allocation of the consciousness of the women role and the youth role is very, very important in South Sudan today. So yes, I can tell you, yes, what are we doing about youth? We are also encouraging what we call the youth entrepreneurship, where the youth need to be encouraged in terms of businesses they do. Because as we said, there are countries graduating a lot of educated youth that they cannot find jobs because some of them have qualified in BAs and master's degrees that have nothing to do with issues which are relevant. Somebody is, for example, is a PhD degree in William Shakespeare, for example. Reading all the literature you can get, he would be well off in Oxford, but not in Africa. You know, so there is a need for a change in what we do. So the youth, again, the youth are the ones who died during the war. Like in our own war, it is young people who are dying. The issue of the children, of the child soldiers, is an issue today in Africa, whether in Central Africa, whether in Mozambique, or previously in South Sudan, it was a problem, which we stopped. The issue of child soldiers is a serious issue in employing young people to die. So when there is war, it is the young people who die. And that's why peace is important, so that this youth age can be used for the benefit of the country. In terms of education, yes, in 2005, after the peace agreement in South Sudan, we had about 300,000 children going to primary school. Today, we have about 2 million going to primary school. These are all young people with a high number of girls, which was not there before. So the policies of survival for us as an African country, I think, is to develop the youth, because the majority of the population is youth. There's no way. You can determine the direction of democratic processes in the country. That is possible. So I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, we can stay until tomorrow, but I have to go somewhere. But I thank you very much for this wonderful sitting to share the problem of South Sudan. We would wish you, and I hope while you are here, you remember South Sudan to support the peace processes, urge your countries to keep the strategic partnership, urge them not to punish, but to bring peace first. I think it's important. And again, I also thank friends who are here, including my good friend, the Ambassador of the Republic of Sudan, who is here among us. Our relations have improved a lot these days, because we have seen that our economic interests are tied together in terms of oil that South Sudan has. We share the same oil. And these are some of the things why we need peace, so that the processes can really continue. Otherwise, thank you very much, and thank you for the good weather we found in this place.
So we'd like to thank you very warmly for this extremely stimulating presentation. I'm sure we all enjoyed it, and let me just formulate a hope. The hope that we could build perhaps a strategic partnership with CERIS and university institutions of your country. And I believe that would be extremely beneficial for both parties.
I agree with you, absolutely.